Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto awakened eyed power of Shinigami and Death God with Harem of Fem-Death Queen. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Eyes of the Beyond. The scroll felt wrong in his hands. Ancient, yes, with its yellowed edges and faded ink, but there was something else. A subtle vibration, a whisper of chakra that skittered across Naruto's fingertips like static electricity. He'd found it buried beneath loose floorboards in his apartment while searching for a lost kunai, wrapped in cloth bearing the spiral symbol of the Uzumaki clan. His clan, though he knew precious little about them beyond the symbol he wore proudly on his back. What the hell is this? Naruto murmured, turning the scroll over in his calloused hands. Moonlight filtered through his window, casting long shadows across his small apartment. 3 years of training with Jiraiya had transformed the once scrawny genin into a more disciplined shinobi. At 17, he stood taller. His shoulders broader, his movements more precise. The childish exuberance remained, but tempered now with something harder, determination forged through loss and struggle. Naruto glanced at his clock. 2:37 a.m. He should be sleeping. Tomorrow's mission briefing was early, and Tsunade would have his head if he showed up yawning again. But the scroll called to him with an insistence he couldn't explain. "All right, let's see what you're all about," he said, carefully breaking the wax seal. The scroll opened with a soft hiss, releasing the scent of ancient paper and something metallic, like blood, but older somehow. The text was written in a dialect he barely recognized, archaic symbols interspersed with more familiar kanji. At the center was a spiraling seal pattern unlike any he'd encountered during his training. Uzumaki clan secret techniques, he read aloud, tracing the title with his finger. The path of sight beyond sight. As his finger passed over the central seal, he felt a sharp sting. A drop of blood welled from his fingertip and fell onto the paper. The seal flashed silver, absorbing the crimson droplet. Shit. Naruto dropped the scroll as chakra surged through the room. Not the familiar blue energy he knew, but something darker, violet tinged with black. It swirled around him, dancing like shadows cast by invisible flames. For a moment, he felt a pressure behind his eyes. A building tension that bordered on pain. Then nothing. The chakra dissipated, leaving only the faint smell of ozone. That was weird, he muttered, retrieving the scroll from where it had rolled beneath his bed. The text had changed. Where before there had been unintelligible symbols, now clear instructions formed on the parchment. The eye of Shinigami lies dormant in those of Uzumaki blood with the potential to perceive beyond the veil. Awaken it not lightly, for to gaze upon death is to be forever changed. Naruto's heart thundered in his chest. He heard of dojutsu like the Sharingan and Byakugan, but never anything associated with his own clan. Certainly nothing connected to the death god itself. Eye of Shinigami, that can't be real, he said. But even as the words left his mouth, he felt the certainty of them waver. After all he'd seen and experienced, why couldn't this be real too? He read further, struggling to comprehend the cryptic. See instructions that detailed meditation techniques and chakra exercises supposedly designed to part the veil between realms. It seemed both ridiculously simple and impossibly complex. Dawn was Brea, king by the time he reluctantly rolled the scroll closed. He hadn't made much sense of it, but one thing was clear, he needed more information, preferably from someone who understood ancient Uzumaki techniques. The old hag might know something, he mused, thinking of Tsunade and her connections to the Senju, who had close ties to the Uzumaki clan in the past. Or maybe, his thoughts were interrupted by a sharp rapping at his door. "Naruto, you in there?" Sakura's voice, tense with urgency. He shoved the scroll under his pillow. "Yeah, coming." When he opened the door, Sakura stood there in full mission gear. Her expression grim. Emergency mission. Border Patrol was ambushed near the Valley of the End. Survivors reported Akatsuki involvement. Akatsuki. Instantly alert, Naruto grabbed his gear. "Is it? We don't know if Sasuke was there," she cut him off, knowing where his thoughts always went. "But Lady Tsunade wants our team to investigate immediately. Kakashi-sensei and Sai are already at the gates." 20 minutes later, Team Kakashi raced through the forest surrounding Konoha, moving with the fluid coordination that came from years of working together. Kakashi led the way, his visible eye serious as he outlined what little they knew. The attack happened just after midnight. 2 border patrol teams were conducting routine surveillance when they encountered what they described as shadows that moved like people but weren't quite solid. Only one Chunin made it back to the outpost, and he died of his injuries shortly after. Sounds like some kind of genjutsu, Sai commented. His face expressionless as always. Or a new jutsu we haven't encountered before, Sakura added. The report mentioned the victims appeared to age rapidly before collapsing. Naruto's mind flashed to the scroll hidden under his pillow. Eye of Shinigami. Death. Was it just coincidence? We'll assess the situation and call for backup if needed, Kakashi continued. Our priority is intelligence gathering, not engagement. If Akatsuki is involved, we need to understand what they're after. They reached the Valley of the End by midday. The massive statues of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju stood as silent sentinels over the waterfall, witnesses to countless battles, including Naruto's failed attempt to stop Sasuke years before. The memory still burned, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. The attack site lay just beyond the valley, where the river narrowed and the forest thickened. Evidence of combat scarred the landscape, trees splintered by powerful jutsu, scorched earth. And the metallic scent of blood. Spread out, but stay within sight of each other, Kakashi ordered. Look for survivors, clues about the attackers, anything unusual. Naruto moved toward the river's edge, scanning for signs of combat. Something felt off, beyond the obvious devastation. The air seemed heavier here, charged with lingering chakra that made the hair on his arms stand up. That's when he saw it, a body half submerged in the shallow water. A Konoha shinobi, judging by the remains of his flak jacket. But something was wrong. The man appeared ancient, skin withered and hair white, though his uniform suggested he couldn't have been more than 30. Over here, Naruto called, wading into the water. As he reached for the body, a shadow detached itself from the tree line. Naruto sensed the attack a split second before it came, instinct and training making him drop and roll even before his conscious mind registered the danger. A blade of dark energy sliced through the air where his head had been, cutting through a boulder behind him like it was made of paper. Contact, he shouted, forming a shadow clone seal. 3 copies materialized beside him as he scanned for his attacker. A figure stepped into the clearing, humanoid but wrong somehow. Its proportions were slightly off, limbs too long, movements too fluid. It wore a black cloak with no markings, not Akatsuki then. And its face was obscured by a white mask with no features save for 2 eye holes that revealed nothing but darkness. Naruto, wait for backup. Kakashi called from somewhere to his right. But the creature was already moving again, faster than seemed possible. It flowed across the clearing like liquid shadow, reforming directly in front of Naruto. Up close, he could see that what he'd taken for a cloak was actually the creature's body, not solid matter but something between smoke and liquid, constantly shifting and reforming. One of his shadow clones lunged with a Rasengan, but the attack passed harmlessly through the creature's midsection, dispersing some of the shadowy substance briefly before it reformed. The creature didn't even acknowledge the attack. Instead, it reached toward Naruto with fingers that elongated into blade-like appendages. Physical attacks don't work, Naruto shouted to his approaching teammates. He leapt backward, buying himself space while his mind raced through options. The creature followed, moving with unnatural speed. Behind it, Naruto glimpsed more shadowy forms emerging from the forest. 7 of them, all moving with the same fluid grace. We're surrounded, Sakura called, her fist already glowing with concentrated chakra. Naruto's shadow clones circled him protectively as he assessed the situation. If physical attacks passed through these things, what would work? His eyes darted to the withered corpse in the river. Whatever these creatures did, it literally drained the life from their victims. The first creature lunged again. Naruto dodged, but not quite fast enough. One of those blade fingers grazed his arm, slicing through his sleeve. The wound burned with unnatural cold, and for an instant, Naruto felt something being pulled from him, not chakra exactly, but something deeper. Instinctively, he channeled chakra to the wound, trying to disrupt whatever technique the creature was using. To his surprise, the shadow being recoiled, its form rippling as if in pain. They don't like chakra directly applied to them. He called out, forming a Rasengan in his palm. Instead of aiming for the creature's body, he slammed the spiraling chakra into the ground at its feet. The explosion of energy and debris disrupted the creature's form temporarily, giving Naruto an opening to retreat toward his team. Kakashi had already unveiled his Sharingan and was weaving signs for a lightning technique. Sai's ink beast circled overhead, providing reconnaissance, while Sakura had already engaged one of the shadow creatures. Her chakra-enhanced strikes keeping it at bay. "What are these things?" Sakura demanded, dodging a swipe that would have taken her head off. "Some kind of chakra construct," Kakashi replied, sending a lightning blade through one of the creatures. It dispersed momentarily before reforming. But unlike any I've encountered before, Naruto created more shadow clones, using them as distractions while he tried to formulate a plan. The creatures were fast, seemingly invulnerable to physical attacks, and their touch was lethal. Conventional tactics wouldn't work. As if reading his thoughts, Kakashi called out, "We need to retreat and regroup. There are too many unknowns." But retreat wasn't an option anymore. The shadow creatures had encircled them, cutting off escape routes. One lunged at Sai, who barely managed to avoid its reaching fingers. Another engaged Kakashi, moving fast enough to challenge even his Sharingan-enhanced reflexes. Three converged on Naruto. He formed more shadow clones, buying seconds of precious time. His mind raced. There had to be a weakness, something they were missing. The creatures reacted to direct chakra contact. Maybe that was the key. "Everyone, channel chakra through your weapons," he shouted, pulling out a kunai and focusing his energy into the blade. The metal hummed and glowed faintly blue. When the next shadow creature attacked, Naruto met it head-on. His chakra-infused kunai sliced through the shadowy form, causing it to writhe and dissolve partially before retreating. It worked, sort of. But there were too many of them. And maintaining chakra flow through weapons was chakra-intensive. A scream cut through the chaos. Sakura, one of the creatures, had managed to grab her arm. Before Naruto's horrified eyes, the skin where it touched her began to gray and wither. Kakashi was already moving toward her, but another shadow being blocked his path. "Sakura!" Naruto screamed, abandoning all caution and charging toward his teammate. Time seemed to slow. The distance between them stretched impossibly long. He wouldn't make it in time. The creature's grip tightened on Sakura's arm, the deathly effect spreading. Her face contorted in pain. Something snapped inside Naruto. Not the familiar surge of the Nine Tails chakra, but something different, something connected to the strange scroll and the blood sacrifice it had demanded. Pressure built behind his eyes, intense enough to make him gasp. His vision blurred, then sharpened with frightening clarity. The world changed. The shadow creatures were no longer shadowy at all. In his new vision, they appeared as emaciated humanoid figures wrapped in tattered black shrouds, their skin a pallid gray, eyes empty sockets that leaked black mist. Around them swirled currents of energy that Naruto somehow knew was death chakra, the antithesis of the life energy that powered all living things. More importantly, he could see patterns in that energy, currents, nodes, weaknesses. Without conscious thought, Naruto channeled chakra to his eyes. The energy responded, forming connections between his normal chakra network and this new visual perception. When he moved, it was with absolute certainty, as if he'd fought these creatures 1,000 times before. He reached Sakura in the space between heartbeats, severing the creature's arm at precisely the point where its death chakra was weakest. The severed limb dissolved into black mist, and the creature recoiled, emitting a sound like distant screaming. "Naruto, your eyes!" Sakura gasped, clutching her injured arm. He couldn't spare the concentration to wonder what she meant. The shadow creatures had all turned toward him now, recognizing the greater threat. They moved as one, converging on his position. Naruto's hands formed seals he didn't consciously know, guided by instinct and the strange new perception granted by his eyes. Chakra, his own blue energy threaded with something darker, gathered around him. Shinigami style. Boundary of worlds, he intoned, the words rising from some deep ancestral memory. A circle of silver-violet energy expanded outward from his feet, encompassing Sa. Kura and spreading to include Kakashi and Sai. Where it touched the shadow creatures, they froze in place, trapped between one moment and the next. What jutsu is that? Kakashi demanded, his sharing and spinning as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. I don't know, Naruto replied honestly. But I can see them now, really see them. They're not alive, but they're not normal summons either. They're fragments of death-given form. Quote, the boundary wouldn't hold them for long. Naruto could feel it weakening already. But it gave them the opening they needed. I can see how to disrupt them permanently, he continued, focusing on the patterns of energy visible to his new sight. There's a core in each one, like a heart, but made of concentrated death chakra. If we hit that, they can't reform. How do we find these cores? Sai asked, ink brush already poised. I'll mark them. When the boundary falls, hit exactly where I indicate. Use as much chakra as you can focus into a single point. Naruto created shadow clones, one for each trapped shadow creature. The clones moved with precision, placing explosive tags at specific points on each creature's form. Not just any explosive tags, but ones hastily modified with Naruto's blood and chakra. Ready? He asked, feeling the boundary technique reaching its limit. His teammates nodded, positioning themselves strategically around the clearing. Now, the boundary shattered like glass. In the same instant, Naruto's clones triggered the explosive tags while the original Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sai struck precisely where indicated. The shadow creatures didn't just disperse this time. They imploded, collapsing in on themselves with unearthly wails before vanishing completely. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving only the natural sounds of the forest and river. Naruto swayed, suddenly exhausted. The strange vision faded, the world returning to normal perspective. He raised a hand to his eyes, feeling wetness. When he looked at his fingers, they were stained with tears tinged pink with blood. Naruto. Sakura was beside him instantly, medical training overriding her own injury. Let me see your eyes. He blinked up at her, vision blurring then clearing. Is everyone okay? We're fine, thanks to whatever you just did, Kakashi said, approaching cautiously. Naruto, your eyes. Sakura produced a small mirror from her medical pouch and held it up. Naruto's breath caught. His normally blue eyes had transformed. The sclerae remained white, but his irises had darkened to a deep violet, shot through ith silver filaments that seemed to shift and move like living things. Most startling of all, a small silver tomo mark had appeared in each eye, similar to the Sharingan's commas but more elongated, almost crescent-shaped. What the hell? He whispered. I've never seen a dojutsu like this, Kakashi said, studying Naruto's eyes with his Sharingan. The chakra pattern is unusual. Not like the Byakugan or Sharingan at all. Naruto thought of the scroll hidden in his apartment. The eye of Shinigami lies dormant in those of Uzumaki blood. I think, he began, but never finished the sentence. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and the world tilted sideways. The last thing he heard was Sakura calling his name before darkness claimed him. The realm between realms stretches before me, endless and ever-changing. I stand on what feels like solid ground, yet when I look down, there is nothing but shifting mist the color of twilight. Above, the sky, if it can be called that, ripples with colors I have no names for. Punctuated by what look like stars but move with purpose, following patterns too complex to track. You shouldn't be here, child of the living. I turned toward the voice, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but something outside such categories altogether. A figure approaches through the mist, tall and wrapped in flowing robes that seem to be made of shadow-given substance. Its face shifts constantly, never settling on a single appearance. Where am I? I ask, surprised that I feel no fear, only curiosity. The crossroads, the figure replies. The space between life and death, being and non-being. Few mortals perceive it, fewer still enter it willingly. I didn't come here willingly, I protest. I was fighting those shadow creatures, and then. The hollow ones. Yes. The figure circles me, studying me with eyes that are sometimes human, sometimes not. They are drawn to the barriers between worlds. Dangerous, but useful in their way. They clear the path for what comes after. Something about this place feels familiar, as if I've been here before but forgotten. The mist swirls around my feet, responding to my thoughts. When I concentrate, I can make out shapes within it, echoes of people, places, moments in time. Asterisk. The eyes, I say suddenly, touching my face. The Shinigami's eye. Is that why I can see this place? Asterisk. The figure stops its circling. For a moment, its face settles into something almost human, a woman's features, austere and beautiful, with eyes like deep wells. So, the Uzumaki blood awakens again. Interesting. It has been a very long time. Asterisk. You know about the Uzumaki clan. About these eyes. Asterisk. I know all things that touch upon my domain, child. The figure, she, now, at least in appearance, gestures. And the mist parts to reveal what looks like a window into another place. Through it, I see my own body, lying on a hospital bed in Konoha. Sakura and Tsunade bend over me, their faces tight with concern. Asterisk. They cannot wake you, the woman says. Not until we are finished here. Asterisk. Finished with what? Who are you? Asterisk. She smiles, and it is both the most beautiful and most terrible expression I have ever witnessed. I have many names, in many tongues. Your people call me Shinigami, though that name captures only a fraction of what I am. Asterisk. Death. I'm talking to death itself. Asterisk. Why am I here? I ask, my voice steadier than I expect it to be. Am I dying? Asterisk. No, not yet. You are here because you have awakened a power that bridges my realm and yours. The Shin. Agami's eye allows its bearer to perceive death in all its forms, past, present, potential. It grants insight into the flow of life force and the nature of its cessation. Asterisk. Those shadow creatures, hollow ones, I could see them clearly with these eyes. See how to defeat them. Asterisk. Yes, they exist partially in death's domain, which makes them invisible to normal perception. Your eyes pierced that veil. She approaches, and the mist ripples outward from her steps. But that is merely the beginning of what the eye can perceive and influence. Asterisk. Her words send a chill through me despite the CK of physical temperature in this place. Influence. You mean I could, what? Kill people with these eyes? Asterisk. All things die, Naruto Uzumaki. The eye does not grant power over that fundamental truth, but it does allow its wielder to see the threads of life, to understand their strength and weakness, to perceive when they are naturally meant to sever. She pauses, and yes, in extraordinary circumstances, to hasten or delay that severing. Asterisk. The implications stagger me. Such power shouldn't belong to anyone, especially not someone like me, rash, impulsive, driven by emotion. I don't want this. It's too much responsibility. Asterisk. And yet it has chosen you. Death, for that's how I've come to think of her now, circles me again. The eye awakens only in those with the capacity to wield it wisely. The fact that you immediately recognize its danger is promising. Asterisk. A thought occurs to me. The Uzumaki clan, did they all have this ability? Asterisk. No, only a rare few in each generation possessed the potential. And even among those, many never awakened it. It requires both the right circumstances and the right spirit. She stops directly before me. Your mother had the potential, though it never manifested. Asterisk. My mother. The word catches in my throat. I know so little about Kushina Uzumaki, just fragments Jiraiya has shared, hints from those who knew her. She could have had these eyes too. Asterisk. The potential was there, as it was in her mother, and her grandmother before her. Death's expression softens slightly. The Uzumaki have long had a special relationship with death, their legendary longevity. Their sealing techniques that could bind even-tailed beasts, their understanding of the boundaries between realms. Asterisk. This is too much to process. My clan, my heritage, my moth. All connected to this power I never knew existed. And now it's awakened in me, changing everything. Asterisk. I need to go back, I say finally. My friends are worried, and I need time to think about all this. Asterisk. Death nods. Yes, this first crossing is brief by necessity. Your body cannot sustain prolonged separation from your spirit, especially not while the eye is still new to you. She reaches out, her hand stopping just short of touching my face. But we will speak again, Naruto Uzumaki. The awakening of the eye never happens without purpose. Forces are moving in both our realms. Asterisk. What forces? What's happening? Asterisk. But she's already withdrawing, her form becoming less distinct. Someone seeks to blur the boundaries between life and death, to gain dominion over both. They must be stopped, for the sake of both realms. Asterisk. Wait, I have more questions. Asterisk. In time. Her voice grows fainter. For now, return to your world. Learn to control the eye. And Naruto, be wary of those who would seek to use your power for their own ends. Not all with knowledge of the eye have benevolent intentions. Asterisk. The mist thickens, obscuring her completely. The crossroads begins to fade around me, colors bleeding into grayness. I feel a pulling sensation, as if invisible hands are drawing me backward through space. Asterisk. Remember, death's voice whispers, barely audible now. The eye sees truth beyond mortal deception. Trust in what it shows you. Asterisk. Darkness takes me once more. Asterisk. Naruto awoke with a gasp, bolting upright in the hospital bed. Sunlight streamed through the windows, suggesting it was mid-morning. His body felt oddly light, as if he'd shed some invisible burden. He's awake. Sakura's voice, followed by the scrape of a chair and hurried footsteps. His vision took a moment to clear, revealing Sakura's concerned face hovering over him. Behind her stood Tsunade, her expression an unreadable mixture of relief and something else, wariness, perhaps. How long was I out? Naruto asked, his throat dry. 3 days, Tsunade replied, approaching the bed. Your chakra network experienced some kind of massive restructuring event. If you were anyone but a Jinchuriki, it probably would have killed you. 3 days. Naruto tried to stand, but Sakura firmly pushed him back down. You're not going anywhere until we understand what happened to you, she said. Naruto, your eyes. Tsunade handed him a small mirror. Naruto raised it cautiously, half expecting to see the strange violet eyes with silver tomo again. But his reflection showed only his normal blue eyes, clear and bright as ever. They've reverted back, he said, simultaneously relieved and disappointed. When I was fighting those shadow creatures, my eyes changed. I could see things. Death chakra, patterns of energy. Weaknesses that were invisible before. Kakashi reported as much, Tsunade said, crossing her arms. He also said you performed a jutsu none of us have ever seen before. Something called Boundary of Worlds. Naruto hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. His dream, if it was a dream, felt too real, too significant to dismiss. But the warning lingered. Be wary of those who would seek to use your power for their own ends. Asterisk. I found a scroll, he said finally. Hidden in my apartment. It had information about something called the Eye of Shinigami, a dojutsu supposedly carried in Uzumaki bloodlines. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Show me this scroll. It's still in my apartment. Under my pillow. He met her gaze steadily. Granny Tsunade, what do you know about the Uzumaki clan? About any connection they might have had to death techniques. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps. She glanced at Sakura. Give us a minute. Sakura looked like she wanted to protest but nodded and left the room, closing the door behind her. When they were alone, Tsunade sat on the edge of Naruto's bed, her voice dropping. The Uzumaki clan was known for many things, their sealing techniques, their vitality, their unique chakra. But there were always rumors. Whispers of Uzumaki abilities that went beyond normal ninjutsu. My grandmother, Mito Uzumaki, never spoke of such things directly. But there were moments. What moments? Tsunade sighed. Once, when I was very young, I saw her stop a man from dying, not through medical ninjutsu as I later learned, but through something else. Her eyes changed, became something like what Kakashi described in you. She made a gesture over the man's chest, and he suddenly started breathing again when he'd been clinically dead for several minutes. Naruto's heart raced. Did she ever explain it? No. When I asked, she told me that some Uzumaki secrets weren't meant to be shared, even with family. That CERTAIN powers came with responsibilities too great to be taken lightly. Tsunade studied him intently. Naruto, if you've awakened something like this, a dojutsu connected to death itself, you need to be extremely careful. The political implications alone could be devastating. Political implications. Think about it. A power that can potentially control the boundary between life and death. Every hidden village, every daimyo, every criminal organization would want to either control you or eliminate you as a threat. She placed a hand on his shoulder. For now, we keep this between us. Kakashi and Sakura already know something happened, but they don't need to know the full extent of what you've discovered. Naruto nodded slowly, processing the implications. There's something else. While I was unconscious, I think I spoke with death. With the Shinigami itself. To her credit, Tsunade didn't dismiss his claim outright. What did it tell you? That someone is trying to blur the boundaries between life and death. To gain control over both realms. He frowned, trying to recall the exact words. She, it appeared as a woman, said this was dangerous for both worlds. The Akatsuki, Tsunade murmured. They're collecting tailed beasts for some greater purpose. This could be connected, maybe, but something told Naruto it wasn't that simple. The shadow creatures hadn't felt like Akatsuki's style. I need to learn more about these eyes. About what they can do. Tsunade stood. First, you need to rest and recover. Your chakra network is still stabilizing. Then we'll retrieve that scroll and see what it can tell us. She moved toward the door, then paused. Naruto, this power, if it's real, if it's what I think it might be, it changes everything. Not just for you, but potentially for the entire shinobi world. After she left, Naruto lay back against the pillows, mind racing. 3 days ago, he'd been a Jinchuriki with dreams of becoming Hokage. Now he was apparently the inheritor of an ancient Uzumaki dojutsu connected to death itself, with the actual Shinigami taking an interest in him. He closed his eyes, focusing inward, searching for that strange chakra he'd accessed during the battle. It was there, a subtle current beneath his normal energy, like a hidden stream flowing beneath the ground. When he concentrated on it, he felt a faint pressure behind his eyes, not painful but noticeable. On impulse, he channeled chakra to his eyes while focusing on that hidden stream. The world shifted. Even through closed eyelids, he could perceive the hospital room differently, not with normal vision but with something that sensed the life energy of everything around him. He could feel the bright flames of chakra from the medical staff down the hall, the smaller flickers of civilian patients. Even the tiny sparks of insects and plants. And something else, a presence in the room with him, watching. Not fully in this realm, but not completely absent either. Naruto's eyes snapped open. The room appeared normal to conventional sight, but with his activated dojutsu, he could see a faint silhouette standing in the corner, the outline of a tall woman with flowing robes and eyes that pierced through realms. You're really here, he whispered. It wasn't just a dream. The figure of death inclined her head slightly. Her lips didn't move, but Naruto heard her voice in his mind. The boundaries grow thinner. Soon, others will cross as easily as you perceive me now. You must be prepared. Prepared for what? Who's trying to control death? But the figure was already fading. Becoming transparent until only those penetrating eyes remained, and then nothing at all. The pressure behind Naruto's eyes subsided as his vision returned to normal. He sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing what had happened. Then, with determination hardening his resolve, he swung his legs over the side of the bed. First, he needed to get out of this hospital and retrieve that scroll. Then he needed to find someone who might know more about the Uzumaki clan's secrets. As he stood, catching his balance against momentary dizziness, Naruto realized he wasn't afraid, not of these new eyes. Not of the Shinigami's warnings, not even of the unknown enemy apparently seeking to control death itself. Instead, he felt a strange sense of purpose, as if pieces of his life that had never quite fit together were finally finding their proper places. He was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, Shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, and now, bearer of the Shinigami's Eye. Whatever was coming, he would face it head-on, just as he always had. But first, he had to convince Sakura to help him sneak out of this hospital. The forest clearing was silent save for the gentle rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Naruto sat cross-legged in the center, the ancient scroll open before him, its contents now strangely legible to his eyes. 3 days had passed since his escape from the hospital, 3 days of intensive study and practice with his new abilities. He'd told no one where he was going, leaving only a note for Tsunade assuring her he would return when he had better control. She would be furious, but he needed this time alone to understand what was happening to him. The scroll contained techniques, meditations, and warnings passed down through generations of Uzumaki who had manifested the eye. Some sections remained cryptic, but others provided concrete guidance on how to activate, control, and eventually master this rare dojutsu. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing as the scroll instructed. In, out, steady and deep, he directed his awareness to the flow of chakra within his body, finding that hidden current of death chakra that fueled the eye. When he opened his eyes again, the dojutsu activated instantly. The world transformed, revealing the interconnected web of life energy that permeated everything. He could see the bright auras of animals in the surrounding forest, the steady glow of ancient trees, even the microscopic flares of insects and bacteria. According to the scroll, this was just the first stage of the eye's abilities, perceiving life force in all its forms. With practice, he would learn to see how that life force naturally ebbed and flowed, to recognize when a thread was meant to sever and when it could be preserved. The responsibility terrified him. Who was he to have such insight? Such power? A twig snapped behind him. Naruto was on his feet in an instant, kunai in hand, the eye showing him a powerful chakra signature approaching through the trees, familiar, but distorted somehow. Who's there? He called, sliding into a defensive stance. A figure emerged from the shadows, a young woman with long dark hair and pale eyes that reflected the moonlight. Hinata Hyuga, but something about her chakra looked wrong through his Shinigami's eye, fractured, as if multiple patterns were competing within her. Naruto, she said, her voice lacking its usual gentle timbre. I've been looking for you. He didn't lower his kunai. You're not Hinata. A smile spread across her face, nothing like Hinata's shy expression. Perceptive. Those new eyes of yours are impressive indeed. The false Hinata's form rippled, chakra patterns shifting until a different woman stood before him, taller, with sharp features and eyes like chips of black ice. Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Tsubaki Kurosawa. What do you want? Naruto demanded, chakra gathering in his free hand. Information, primarily. Tsubaki remained perfectly still, making no threatening movements. About those fascinating eyes you've awakened and what you intend to do with them. How did you know about my eyes? Quote, I make it my business to know things others don't. Particularly things related to death. She gestured to the scroll at his feet. The Eye of Shinigami is a legend even among those who study forbidden techniques. To find someone who has actually awakened it, well, that makes you very interesting indeed. Naruto studied her through his dojutsu. Her chakra was unusual, disciplined yet volatile, WITH currents of something that resembled the death chakra he was learning to recognize. Not an immediate threat, but dangerous nonetheless. You still haven't answered my question, he said. What do you want from me? Tsubaki's lips curved in a half smile. For now, just to meet you, to confirm what my sources told me. She took a step forward, ignoring the kunai he still held. But soon, Naruto Uzumaki. You'll need allies who understand what you're becoming. When that time comes, remember my name. Before he could respond, she dissolved into a flurry of black feathers that scattered on the wind. A crow's call echoed through the clearing, and then silence returned. Naruto lowered his kunai, mind racing. Word of his new power was spreading already, attracting attention he wasn't prepared for. Tsunade had been right about the political implications. He needed to return to Konoha. Whatever was happening, he couldn't face it alone in the forest. As he rolled up the scroll and prepared to depart, a chill passed through the clearing. The pressure behind his eyes intensified, and he knew without turning that death stood behind him once more. The pieces begin to move, her voice whispered in his mind. The game of life and death accelerates. I'm not playing any game, Naruto replied aloud, facing the spectral figure. And I don't intend to be anyone's piece. Death's shifting features settled briefly into what might have been a smile. That, Naruto Uzumaki, is precisely why the eye chose you. The figure faded, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts and the weight of a power he was only beginning to understand. Dawn would break soon, bringing with it a new day and new challenges. He tucked the scroll securely into his pack and set off toward Konoha, the Shinigami's eye dormant once more, but its presence a constant reminder of how much had changed, and how much was yet to come. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Death Walks Among Us. Silver moonlight spilled across the hospital bed, transforming sterile white sheets into a ghostly sea. Tsunade stood motionless in the doorway, her shadow stretching long and thin across the empty room. The folded note on the pill. Ao mocked her, Naruto's hasty scrawl explaining nothing and everything at once. Stubborn, reckless idiot, she muttered, the words lacking genuine heat. 3 knocks behind her, Shizune, clutching a stack of medical charts to her chest. The Anbu search teams found nothing, she reported. It's like he vanished completely. Tsunade didn't turn. He'll return when he's ready. But Lady Tsunade, with the Akatsuki actively hunting Jinchuriki. Naruto isn't just any Jinchuriki anymore. Tsunade finally faced her assistant, amber eyes reflecting complicated emotions. If what I suspect is true, the Akatsuki may have more to fear from him than he does from them. Moonlight shifted suddenly, not the natural movement of celestial bodies, but something else. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Frost crystallizing along the window edges despite the warm spring night outside. Both women tensed, decades of shinobi instincts flaring to life. What is this chakra? Shizune whispered, her breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. Tsunade didn't answer, her gaze locked on the far corner of the room where shadows gathered, deepening, solidifying into something that wasn't quite there and yet undeniably present. Senju Tsunade, came a voice like winter wind over ancient graves. Granddaughter of Uzumaki Mito, how interesting that you would recognize the signs. The shadows parted like curtains, revealing a woman of impossible beauty. Tall and willowy, with alabaster skin that seemed to emit its own soft luminescence. Her hair, flowing to her waist, shifted bedway. Pure white and deepest black depending on how the light struck it. She wore a kimono of midnight blue, adorned with patterns that resembled constellations but matched no known star charts. Most street-ricking were her eyes, violet irises surrounding pupils that seemed to contain entire universes, depths that no human gaze should possess. Shinigami, Tsunade breathed, the name falling from her lips without conscious thought. Beside her, Shizune made a strangled sound of disbelief. The entity's mouth curved into what might have been amusement. That name serves well enough for our interaction. Though your kind has given me many through the centuries. Why are you here? Tsunade managed, fighting the instinct to kneel before this being. She was Hokage. She bowed to no one, not even death itself. The Uzumaki boy has awakened something dormant for generations. The Shinigami glided forward, her feet never quite seeming to touch the floor. Events set in motion long before his birth accelerate toward their conclusion. I find myself interested in the outcome. Naruto, Tsunade's voice strengthened with protective instinct. What do you want with him? Want? The being tilted her head, the gesture unnervingly bird-like. Fascinating how your kind always assumes desire drives all action. I do not want, Senju Tsunade. I observe, I maintain, I balance. Frost patterns spread across the floor with each word, intricate mandalas forming and dissolving in the entity's wake. Then why show yourself now? Why to us? Shizune found her voice at last. The Shinigami turned those bottomless eyes toward her. Because soon I will walk among you in more substantial form. Courtesy demands, notification. You're coming here, to Konoha. Tsunade's mind raced through implications, each more alarming than the last. The boundaries between realms grow dangerously thin. What began as ripples becomes a tide. The entity's form wavered slightly, like a reflection in disturbed water. The Uzumaki boy will need guidance in the power he now carries. And I require closer observation of certain developments. Before Tsunade could demand clarification, the hospital room door burst open. A breathless Chunin messenger stood panting in the doorway. Lady Hokage, we've received reports of Naruto Uzumaki approaching the north gate. When Tsunade turned back to the corner, the Shinigami was gone. Only a lingering chill and the faint scent of night-blooming flowers suggested she'd ever been there at all. Summon Kakashi and Sakura, Tsunade ordered, already striding toward the door. And clear the usual protocols. I want Naruto brought directly to my office. No delays, no paperwork, no questions. As they hurried through the hospital corridors, Shizune leaned closer. Lady Tsunade, was that really? Yes. The single word fell like a stone. But why would death itself take interest in Naruto? Tsunade's pace never faltered. Because something is coming that concerns even the Shinigami. And somehow, our unpredictable, knucklehead ninja is at the center of it all. Dash dash dash. Falling leaves spiraled through amber streetlight, their shadows dancing across Naruto's back. As he approached Konoha's northern gate. 4 days of solitude had changed him. Not physically, but in the way he moved, the way he held himself. More deliberate, more aware. The two Chunin guards straightened as he approached. Recognition quickly followed by poorly concealed relief. Uzumaki Naruto, the taller one called, Lady Hokage has standing orders regarding your return. We're to escort you directly to her office. Naruto nodded, unsurprised. Lead the way. Whispers followed their progress through the village. 4 days wasn't long, but rumors traveled faster than light in a shinobi community. Especially rumors about mysterious new dojutsu and battles with shadow creatures that left no bodies behind. The Hokage Tower stood sentinel against the indigo night sky, windows illuminated despite the late hour. Tsunade would be waiting, probably with a lecture prepared and possibly a fist ready to introduce itself to his skull. Naruto found himself smiling faintly at the thought. The Chunin guards delivered him to the antechamber outside Tsunade's office, where Shizune waited, her expression a curious mixture of relief and wariness. She's ready for you, she said simply, opening the heavy wooden door. Inside, Tsunade stood at the window, back to the room, hands clasped behind her. Kakashi leaned against the far wall, orange book absent for once, visible eye watchful. Sakura occupied one of the chairs before the desk, rising instantly when Naruto entered. You absolute idiot, she exclaimed, crossing the room in 3 quick strides. For a moment, Naruto thought he might strike him. Then her arms were around him in a brief, fierce hug. Do you have any idea how worried we've been? Sorry, he replied, genuinely meaning it. I needed time to understand what was happening. And do you? Tsunade asked, finally turning from the window. Understand what's happening. Something in her tone made Naruto study her more carefully. The subtle tension in her shoulders. The tightness around her eyes. Something had happened while he was gone. Not completely, he admitted. But enough to know I need help. He reached into his pack, withdrawing the ancient scroll. The parchment seemed to hum with latent energy as he placed it on Tsunade's desk. The Eye of Shinigami, he began without preamble. A dojutsu that's appeared rarely in the Uzumaki bloodline for generations. It allows the user to perceive and eventually manipulate the boundary between life and death. Kakashi straightened, visible eye narrowing. Manipulate how, exactly? I'm still figuring that out. Naruto ran a hand through his hair, longer and wilder after days in the forest. The scroll explains some of it. In its basic form, the eye lets me see life force, in people, animals, plants, everything. I can see how it flows. Where it's strong, where it's weak. Like Byakugan can see chakra pathways, Sakura suggested. Similar, but different. It's not just chakra, it's something more fundamental. The scroll calls it the thread of existence. Naruto's gaze shifted to Tsunade. With training, users can learn to strengthen weakened threads, temporarily delay death, or speed its arrival. The implications hung heavy in the air. A dojutsu that can kill, Kakashi murmured. That would make you a target for every major power. It's more complicated than that, Naruto countered. The eye doesn't grant absolute power over life and death. There are rules, limitations. Natural laws that can't be broken, only bent slightly. And who enforces these laws? Tsunade asked, watching him intently. The question caught him off guard. The Shinigami itself, I guess. At least, that's what. He stopped, suddenly realizing what Tsunade was really asking. You've seen her, haven't you? Death. She came to you. The confirmation in Tsunade's eyes was answer enough. When? He demanded. Tonight. Just before you returned. Tsunade sank into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her years. She said she would be walking among us soon. That the boundaries between realms are thinning. Silence descended as everyone absorbed this information. Sakura was the first to break it. Are we talking about actual death? As in, the death taking human form and just, what? Moving into an apartment in Konoha. Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto found his lips twitching. Trust Sakura to cut through the mysticism with practical questions. I don't know the details, he admitted. But it matches what she told me in the crossroads, that's the space between realms where we spoke while I was unconscious. She said someone is trying to gain control over both life and death, to blur the boundaries between them. Kakashi pushed away from the wall. The Akatsuki, maybe, or something worse. Naruto turned to Tsunade. We need to learn more about the eye and its history. Are there any Uzumaki clan records in Konoha? Some, she nodded. After Uzushiogeku's destruction, Konoha preserved what scrolls and artifacts we could recover. They're stored in the restricted section of the archives. She hesitated, then added, there's someone who might help you navigate them. A researcher who specializes in ancient clan techniques, particularly those considered unorthodox. Who? Naruto asked. Keita Senju, a distant cousin of mine from a minor branch family. Brilliant but somewhat eccentric. She's dedicated her life to documenting forbidden jutsu, not to use them, but to understand their origins and implications. A Senju. Naruto's interest sharpened. The Senju and Uzumaki clans had close historical ties. Don't get too excited, Tsunade warned. Keita's connection to the main Senju line is several generations removed. But she knows more about obscure clan techniques than anyone alive, and she's trustworthy, if a bit intense. Where can I find her? I'll arrange a meeting tomorrow. Tsunade's tone made it clear the discussion was shifting. For tonight, you need rest. And tomorrow, we need to establish some protocols for your new situation. Naruto recognized the dismissal but stood his ground. There's something else you should know. While I was training in the forest, someone found me. A woman named Tsubaki Kurosawa. She knew about my eyes. Kakashi tensed visibly. Describe her. Tall, sharp features, black eyes. Used some kind of transformation jutsu to look like Hinata at first. When I called her out, she revealed herself and said I'd need allies who understand what I'm becoming. Tsubaki Kurosawa, Kakashi repeated, exchanging a loaded glance with Tsunade. Former Anbu assassination specialist. Defected 3 years ago after claiming she'd discovered corruption in Konoha's highest ranks. She's been on our watch list ever since. But sightings are rare. Should I be worried? Yes, Kakashi answered bluntly. She's extremely dangerous. Her specialty was infiltration and elimination. No trace, no evidence. Just targets who appeared to die from natural causes. Some called her Death's Shadow. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. If she's taking an interest in your new abilities, Tsunade added, it's unlikely to be benevolent. Tsubaki always had her own agenda, even as an Anbu operative. Naruto absorbed this information, filing it away for future consideration. I'll be careful, but right now, I think there are bigger concerns than one rogue Anbu. Agreed. Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples. Go home, Naruto. Get some sleep. Report back at 0900 hours tomorrow. I'll have Keita meet you here. This time, Naruto accepted the dismissal. He was halfway to the door when Tsunade added, and Naruto. No more disappearing acts. Whatever's coming, we face it together. He turned, offering a tired smile. Wouldn't have it any other way, Granny. Dreams of silver mist and endless twilight landscapes followed Naruto through the night, leaving him restless and unrested when morning arrived. His apartment felt simultaneously too small and too empty, the familiar surroundings now somehow strange after his days in the forest. After a quick shower and change of clothes, he made his way toward Hokage Tower, absently noting how villagers reacted to his presence, some with the usual warmth, others with new wariness. Word of his confrontation with the shadow creatures had spread, though the details remained murky in public knowledge. The morning sun cast long shadows across Konoha, the village slowly coming alive with merchants opening shops, children racing toward the academy. Shinobi reporting for missions. Normal life continuing despite the extraordinary events unfolding around them. Naruto envied their obliviousness. Lost in thought, he nearly called. IDED with a woman turning the corner near the Yamanaka flower shop. She carried a towering stack of books that obscured her face, teetering precariously as she attempted to navigate the morning foot traffic. Sorry, Naruto apologized, steadying the topmost volumes before they could fall. Quite all right, came the distracted reply from behind the literary barricade. Entirely my fault. Fascinati. Ing research on chakra visualization techniques. Couldn't wait to compare them to the Yamanaka scrolls, wasn't watching where. Oh. The woman lowered her books slightly, revealing a pair of intelligent golden eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her hair, an unusual forest green, was pulled back in a messy bun secured with what appeared to be writing brushes. She wore scholarly robes in earth tones, adore. Ned with subtle Senju clan symbols at the collar and cuffs. Recognition dawned in those golden eyes. You're him, Uzumaki Naruto. The excitement in her voice caused several passers-by to turn and stare. The one with the, she lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, the Shinigami's eye. Lady Tsunade said you'd be coming to the archives, but I didn't expect to literally run into you. Naruto blinked, taken aback by the torrent of words. You must be Keita Senju. Yes, sorry, I should have introduced myself properly. She attempted to shift her books to one arm for a handshake, nearly dropping the entire stack in the process. Perhaps I should put these down first. Are you heading to the tower? I am too. We could walk together. I have so many questions about your visual percept. Ion of death energy. Do you perceive it as a color spectrum or more like texture variations? Naruto found himself smiling despite his fatigue. There was something endearing about her enthusiastic intensity. Maybe we should save the technical questions for somewhere more private. Oh, of course. Keita looked around as if just remembering they stood in the middle of a public street. Security P. Protocols. Classified information. Completely understand. She nodded so vigorously that her glasses slipped down her nose. To the tower then. I brought preliminary research materials. Historical account. S of Uzumaki chakra manipulation. Fascinating connections to Uzushio's island geography. Naruto relieved her of half the stack, earning a grateful smile. Lead the way. As they walked, Keita mainta into running commentary on Senju Uzumaki historical connections, pausing only occasionally for breath. Her knowledge was clearly vast, but her social awareness seemed somewhat limited. She frequently stopped mid-stride to emphasize a point, oblivious to the pedestrian traffic forced to navigate around them. And that's why the spiral symbol represents both whirlpools and the unique chakra circuit. Lashin pattern found in Uzumaki clan members, she concluded as they reached the tower steps. Your chakra must be particularly fascinating with both Uzumaki heritage and the Nine Tails, not to mention this new dojutsu manifestation. I've theorized for years about potential dormant bloodlines. Most scholars dismissed the Uzumaki as mere seal masters with unusual vitality, but I always suspected. Keita, Tsunade's stern voice interrupted from the tower entrance. You're overwhelming him. Am I? Keita blinked owlishly at Naruto. I apologize. Excessive enthusiasm. Occupational hazard of Azola. TED research. Limited social interaction with non-academics. It's fine, Naruto assured her, genuinely amused rather than annoyed. Her passion reminded him of himself when discussing ramen varieties. Tsunade led them through the tower to a conference room rather than her office. Maps and scrolls already covered the large central table, and the windows had been covered with privacy seals, Elabora. Ones that Naruto recognized as high-level Anbu security measures. I've cleared your schedule for the day, Tsunade informed Naruto. Keita has temporary top security clearance to discuss classified information regarding your condition. She turned to the researcher. Remember our agreement, Keita. Everything discussed remains confidential. No publications, no research papers, no theoretic explorations that mysteriously mirror classified information. Keita nodded solemnly. Of course, Lady Hokage. Knowledge restriction protocols fully understood. The moment Tsunade turned away, however, she shot Naruto a conspiratorial wink that suggested academic curiosity might eventually outweigh administrative restrictions. I'll leave you to it, Tsunade said. Shizune will bring lunch at midday. I expect a preliminary report by evening, Keita. After the Hokage departed, Keita immediately began arranging her books and scrolls in what appeared to be a highly specific but utterly incomprehensible organizational system. "Now then," she said, eyes bright with scholarly excitement, "tell me everything about your visual perception when the dojutsu activates. Start with baseline sensory changes. Then progress to cognitive interpretation frameworks." Naruto described his experiences as best he could, the strange vision that allowed him to see life force and death chakra, the ability to perceive weaknesses in the shadow creatures, the sense of knowing things he had no logical way of knowing. Keita listened with rapt attention, occasionally scribbling notes in a shorthand. He looked more like artistic doodles than actual writing. When he mentioned his conversations with death itself, she nearly appended an inkwell in her excitement. Direct communication with a fundamental cosmic force. She breathed, eyes wide. The metaphysical implications alone are staggering. The Shinigami has been documented in sealing jutsu and ritual contexts, but sustained interactive dialogue. Unprecedented. It wasn't exactly a friendly chat, Naruto clarified. More like cryptic warnings and vague statements about boundaries weakening. Fascinating. Keita pushed her glasses up her nose. Consistent with ancient Uzumaki texts referencing the veil between realms. Most scholars interpreted this metaphorically, but with your experience. She rummaged through her scrolls, extracting one with faded red borders. Here, an account from approximately 200 years ago. An Uzumaki elder described a clan member with eyes that pierced the veil, allowing him to converse with the departed and know the moment of death's approach. She spread more scrolls across the table, pointing out references to Uzumaki clan members throughout history who demonstrated unusual abilities related to life force, death prediction, or communication with spirits. Most accounts were fragmentary, treated as legends rather than historical fact, but patterns emerged. The Uzumaki clan's unusual vitality and longevity may be connected to their fundamental understanding of life force, Keita explained, her initial scattered enthusiasm now focused into scholarly precision. Their sealing techniques often incorporated elements that other shinobi traditions couldn't replicate, as if they perceived aspects of chakra others simply couldn't see. "Like I can with these eyes," Naruto murmured. "Exactly." Keita beamed at him. The eye of Shinigami may represent not a new ability, but the highest expression of what made Uzumaki Fuinjutsu so powerful. The ability to see and manipulate the fundamental threads of existence. Their discussion continued through the morning, delving into historical accounts, theoretical frameworks, and practical applications. Keita proved to be not just knowledgeable but insightful, connecting disparate pieces of information into coherent theories that actually made sense of Naruto's experiences. When Shizune delivered lunch, simple bento boxes and tea, Keita hardly noticed. Continuing to talk between bites without missing a beat. Her enthusiasm was infectious, helping Naruto see his new abilities as something to explore rather than fear. "I'd like to observe the dojutsu directly," Keita said finally, setting aside her half-eaten lunch. "If you're comfortable activating it in controlled conditions." Naruto hesitated. "It's safe for you to be around when I use it." "Theoretically." She nodded. "Historical accounts suggest observation itself poses no danger. The eye doesn't emit harmful energy, it perceives existing energies normally invisible to others." "All right." Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the now familiar current of energy beneath his normal chakra flow. When he directed it to his eyes and opened them again, the world transformed into its alternate state of visible life forces and energy currents. Keita gasped, leaning forward with undisguised fascination. "Extraordinary." The violet-silver iris coloration and crescent tomo formation, exactly as described in the Uzumaki Elder's journal from the Third Shinobi War era. She squinted at him. "Can you describe what you see when looking at me?" Naruto studied her through the eye's perception. "Your life force is bright, strong. It flows in unusual patterns though, not like most people's. There are branches, like a tree with many roots and branches, reaching outward. Senju bloodline characteristics." Keita nodded eagerly. "Our clan's connection to natural energy and the forest. That's consistent with theoretical models of Senju chakra structures." She scribbled more notes. "What else can you perceive?" "There's something." Naruto tilted his head, focusing more intently. "A shadow near your right shoulder. Not part of you, but attached somehow." He frowned. "It feels sad." Keita went very still, her excitement fading. Can you describe it? It's not fully formed. More like an impression. Female, I think. Young. Naruto concentrated harder. She has your eyes. And she's protective of you. The researcher's breath caught audibly. My sister, she whispered. She died when we were children. I was 7, she was 5. Fever during a harsh winter. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Naruto deactivated the dojutsu, returning to normal vision. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, Keita interrupted, composing herself with visible effort. This is valuable data. The eye allows perception of spiritual attachments, lingering connections between the living and deceased loved ones. Her voice maintained scientific detachment, but her hands trembled slightly as she noted this observation. Completely consistent with historical accounts. Remarkable. Before Naruto could respond, a cold draft swept through the room, earing papers despite the sealed windows. The temperature plummeted so rapidly that their breath became visible in the suddenly frigid air. What's happening? Keita whispered, eyes wide behind fogged glasses. She's coming, Naruto said simply, rising to his feet. The shadows in the far corner of the room deepened, swirling like dark water before parting to reveal a figure stepping through, as if crossing a threshold from one world into another. The Shinigami appeared different than in their previous encounters. Still inhumanly beautiful, still emanating ancient power, but more solid. Her features had settled into a fixed appearance, alabaster skin, flowing white hair with tips that faded to black, and eyes that shifted between deep violet and unfathomable darkness. She wore modern clothing now, a simple white kimono-style wrap dress with subtle black detailing that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical. Naruto Uzumaki, she greeted, her voice less ethereal than before, though still carrying unusual harmonics. Our paths cross once more, as promised. Keita had gone completely rigid, her academic composure shattered by the physical manifestation of her research subject. The Shinigami, she breathed, half rising from her chair before sinking back down as her knees apparently gave way. The entity turned those depthless eyes toward the researcher. Keita of the Senju, your studies brush against the edges of my domain with surprising frequency. A hint of something like amusement colored her tone. Your theories regarding chakra's relationship to life essence are not entirely inaccurate. Coming from a primordial cosmic force, this apparently constituted high praise. Keita made a small, strangled sound that might have been thanks. Naruto found his voice. You said you'd be walking among us. Is this what you meant? Taking human form. For now. Death glided further into the room, each movement unnaturally graceful. Events accelerate. The veils thin. My direct observation has become necessary. You could have knocked, Naruto pointed out, surprising himself with his own boldness. That earned him a look that might have been surprise, or possibly amusement. It was difficult to interpret expressions on a face that had only recently decided to remain constant. Conventional entrances, she said after a moment, are for conventional beings. Keita, recovering somewhat from her shock, fumbled for her notebook. May I? Would it be presumptuous? Could I possibly ask some questions about? Later, perhaps. The Shinigami cut her off. With a gentle finality that nonetheless brooked no argument. My purpose here concerns more immediate matters. Her gaze returned to Naruto. The eye you have awakened grows stronger. Your perception deepens. Soon, greater abilities will manifest. What abilities? Naruto asked. The power to see one's destined time of death. The ability to temporarily strengthen life threads near breaking. Eventually, the capacity to sever threads before their natural conclusion, though this last carries grave consequences and limitations. The clinical way she described what amounted to godlike powers sent a chill through Naruto that had nothing to do with the room's supernatural cold. I don't want that kind of power, he said firmly. Especially not the last part. What we want rarely aligns with what becomes necessary. Death moved to the window, looking out over Konoha though her gaze seemed to see much further. The power awakens for purpose, not caprice. Something approaches that requires the eye's unique perception. The threat you mentioned before, Naruto recalled. Someone trying to control both life and death. Yes, the Shinigami turned back to face them. A mortal who discovered fragments of knowledge best left forgotten. One who believes death itself can be conquered, bent to human will. Her expression darkened. Such ambition disrupts the natural order. The NCES extend beyond your realm into others. Who is it? Naruto pressed. Give us a name, a location, something we can act on. Death regarded him with those bottomless eyes. Names have power, Uzumaki Naruto. To speak this one prematurely would draw unwanted attention. She paused. But soon, very soon, they will reveal themselves. The first major incursion approaches, an attempt to breach the veil between realms on a scale not seen in centuries. Here, in Konoha, alarm sharpened Naruto's voice. No, but nearby, sacred ground, where the barrier between worlds has always been thinner. She gestured toward one of Kata's maps, specifically, to a mountain region several days' journey northwest of Konoha. Kata gasped in recognition. The ancient burial grounds, legendary resting place foe, our powerful shinobi from the pre-village era. Indeed, Death nodded approvingly. A nexus of spiritual energy, where countless powerful souls transitioned from one realm to another. An ideal locatio, and for one seeking to tear holes in the veil. When? Naruto demanded. When will this happen? 3 days hence, when the moon wanes to perfect darkness. The temperature in the room began to norm. Elise's Death's form grew slightly less substantial. I have remained in your realm too long for now. Maintaining this form requires adjustments I have not yet completed. Wait, Naruto stepped forward. If you're going to keep appearing like this, you need a name, a human name. We can't just call you Shinigami, or Death, while you're walking around Konoha. The entity considered this with apparent curiosity. A practical suggestion. Human identities require human designations. She seemed to ponder for a moment. In your language, the character for Death is she. Simple, concise. She, Naruto repeated. That works. Until we meet again, Naruto Uzumaki. Study well with the Senju scholar. The knowledge you gain may determine whether your world retains its natural boundaries, or dissolves into chaos. With those cheerful parting words, Death, now she, faded from view, the shadows receding to normal proportions, the room's temperature returning completely to normal. Silence reigned for several long moments after her departure. That, Kata finally whispered, was the single most significant metaphysical encounter in recorded history. She looked down at her notebook. She'd managed to scribble exactly nothing during the entire interaction. And I didn't document a word of it. Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto couldn't help but laugh. The sound broke the lingering tension. And even Kata managed a self-deprecating smile. So, Naruto said, we have 3 days to prepare for someone trying to tear open the barrier between life and death at some ancient burial ground. Where do we start? Quote, Kata pushed her glasses up with renewed determination. Research, naturally. The ancient burial grounds have extensive historical documentation, legends, archaeological studies, geographical surveys. Her academic enthusiasm returned in full force. Then we need to expand our understanding of your dojutsu's capabilities, specifically how it might counter techniques designed to manipulate the death-life boundary. She was already pulling more scrolls from her seemingly bottomless collection, arranging them in what Naruto assumed was some sort of logical order. We should inform Lady Tsunade immediately, she added. This clearly requires a formal mission assignment, probably Anbu-level security classification. Interdisciplinary team composition would be ideal. Kata, Naruto interrupted gently. Yes, thank you for helping with this. The researcher blinked, momentarily thrown off her academic rhythm. A genuine smile softened her features. Knowledge exists to serve life. Naruto Uzumaki. Even knowledge about death. She adjusted her glasses with a determined gleam. Now, shall we begin with topographical analysis of the burial grounds? Or historical accounts of previous boundary disturbances. Twilight painted Konoha in shades of amber and purple as Naruto made his way home from the archives. His mind swam with information, historical accounts, theoretical frameworks, practical exercises for developing his dojutsu's abilities. Kata had proven to be not just knowledgeable but genuinely helpful, translating complex concepts into terms he could understand and apply. Tsunade had assigned an elite team to investigate the ancient burial grounds. Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, and 2 Anbu operatives with expertise in barrier techniques. They would depart at dawn, giving them 2 days to reach the site and prepare before the new moon. The streets were quieter now, most villagers returned home for evening meals. Naruto's apartment awaited, empty and increasingly unwelcoming. Since awakening the eye, he'd felt a strange disconnection from his former life, as if he existed partially in another world already. Lost in thought, he almost missed the figure standing in the shadows near his building entrance. "Almost. I know you're there," he called, stopping at a safe distance. "You might as well show yourself." Impressive awareness, came a familiar voice as Tsubaki Kurosawa stepped into the fading light. "Your senses are sharpening already." Unlike their forest encounter, she made no attempt at disguise now. Tall and lithe, with short scarlet hair and amber eyes that evaluated everything with predatory intensity. She wore practical dark clothing, form-fitting but non-restrictive, with numerous hidden weapons if the subtle bulges were any indication. "What do you want, Tsubaki?" Naruto remained alert but not overtly hostile. "Konoha's Anbu would love to have a conversation with you." "I'm sure they would," she smiled thinly. "But I'm not here for them. I'm here for you, or more specifically, for what you're about to face at the ancient burial grounds." Naruto stiffened. "How do you know about that?" "I make it my business to know things others don't," she repeated her words from their previous meeting. "Especially things related to those who manipulate death." "You're following me." "Observing," she corrected. "There's a difference." Quote, "Not from where I'm standing." Tsubaki sighed, leaning against the wall with deliberate casualness that didn't quite mask her readiness for sudden movement. "Listen, Uzumaki, I could have approached you in a dozen different ways that ended with you unconscious or dead if that was my intention. Instead, I'm having a conversation in plain view where any passing Anbu could spot me. Your point being, my point is that I'm taking a significant risk to warn you." Her casual demeanor slipped, revealing something harder underneath. "What awaits at the BU? Real Grounds isn't just another enemy to be defeated with flashy jutsu and determination. You're facing something that has been planning this moment for decades, something that understands death in ways even your new eyes haven't shown you yet." Naruto studied her, weighing her words against Kakashi's warning about her dangerous nature. Why would a rogue assassin care? Something flickered in her amber eyes, pain, perhaps, or old anger. Because I've seen what happens when the boundary between realms is breached. 3 years ago, I was assigned to eliminate a cult leader in the land of hot springs. What I found was a man who had already sacrificed 17 children to create a minor tear in the veil. Her voice remained steady, but her hands clenched at the memory. What came through that tear wasn't human. It wasn't even alive in any sense we understand. And it couldn't be killed, not by any technique I possessed. "What happened?" Naruto asked, despite himself. "I sealed the room with explosive tags and collapsed the entire compound. It contained the entity, but not before it," she hesitated, "not before it showed me things. Truths about death that no human was meant to know." Her gaze locked with his. "The corruption you believe exists in Konoha's leadership. It started with exposure to entities like the one you'll face 3 nights from now." Naruto processed this information, searching for deception but finding only intensity and what appeared to be genuine concern. "If what you're saying is true, why not take this to Tsunade? She'd listen if the evidence was compelling." Tsubaki's laugh held no humor. "The Hokage operates within a system already compromised at multiple levels. There are eyes and ears everywhere, some belonging to people who don't even realize they're serving something beyond our realm." "That sounds paranoid," Naruto said bluntly. "It would," she acknowledged, "to someone who hasn't seen what I've seen. But you have something I didn't. You have eyes that can perceive the truth directly." She pushed away from the wall, taking a step closer. "Use them, Uzumaki. When you reach the burial grounds, really look at those Anbu accompanying you. Look at their life threads and tell me if you see anything unusual." Before Naruto could respond, she tossed something toward him, a small scroll sealed with wax impressed with a spiral pattern. He caught it reflexively. "Uzumaki sealing techniques modified for entities that exist between realms," she explained. "More effective than standard barriers against what you're likely to encounter." "Why help me?" Naruto asked, still suspicious despite her apparent sincerity. Tsubaki was already backing into the shadows. Because if the veil breaks completely, we all lose, living and dead alike. And because those eyes of yours might be the only thing that can prevent it. Her form seemed to waver, darkness gathering around her. We'll meet again at the burial grounds, Uzumaki. Whether a allies or opponents depends entirely on what your Shinigami's eye reveals. Then she was gone, melting into the twilight as if she'd never been there. Only the scroll in Naruto's hand proved otherwise. He stood motionless for several moments, weighing her warnings against the possibility of manipulation. Tsubaki Kurosawa was a known defector, possibly unstable, certainly dangerous. And yet, the scroll in his hand felt genuine. The seal work, from what he could see without breaking it, incorporated Uzumaki's spiral patterns he recognized from his own studies. And her warning about the Anbu operatives, that could be easily verified with his dojutsu. Naruto pocketed the scroll and continued to his apartment, mind heavy with new uncertainties. Inside, he barely registered the familiar surroundings as he moved to the window. Looking out over Konoha's nightscape, lights winked on throughout the village, families gathering for dinner, friends meeting for evening drinks, children being tucked into bed. Normal life. Life worth protecting. A chill touched the back of his neck, familiar now, almost expected. He didn't turn. Is she telling the truth? He asked the empty room, knowing he wasn't alone. About corruption in Konoha. About the danger at the burial grounds. She materialized beside him at the window, her presence less overwhelming than earlier but still unmistakably otherworldly. In the fading light, her white hair gleamed with an inner luminescence, the black tips absorbing shadow rather than merely reflecting it. Truth and deception are rarely absolute opposites, she replied, her gaze following his across the village. The assassin speaks truth as she perceives it. Whether that perception aligns with objective reality. She made a graceful gesture that so. Mahou conveyed the complexity of the question. That's not an answer, Naruto pointed out. It is the only answer possible without disrupting events that must unfold naturally. She turned those depthless eyes toward him. Your eye grants perception beyond normal human limits, Naruto Uzumaki. Trust in what it reveals to you. You sound like her now. Perhaps because on this point, she is correct. She's form seemed to solidify further, becoming almost entirely human in appearance. Only her eyes and the subtle glow of her skin betrayed her true nature. The ability to perceive truth direct. TLY is the eye's most fundamental power, and its most dangerous. Dangerous how? Knowledge changes those who possess it. To see what others cannot. To perceive layers of reality hidden from ordinary perception, it isolates. Separates. Something like compassion softened her ageless features. Those who bore the eye before you often withdrew from human connection, finding it easier to observe life than to participate in it. The words struck closer to Naruto's fears than he wanted to admit. Already he felt that disconnection growing, a sense of standing apart, of seeing too much. Is that inevitable? He asked quietly. Nothing involving human choice is inevitable. She turned fully toward him, her presence filling the small room without overwhelming it. That is what makes your kind see. Multineously fascinating and frustrating. You defy patterns. You choose paths that logic suggests you should not. Including me. Do I defy your patterns? For the first time, Naruto witnessed Samut. Hing-like uncertainty cross Death's face. You are unexpected in many ways. Your responses differ from previous bearers of the eye. Your connections to others remain strong despite the power awakening within you. She studied him with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable from anyone else. It is why I have taken this form, to observe more directly how you integrate the power with your existing nature. So I'm an experiment, an anomaly, she corrected. One that may prove significant in the coming confrontation. Naruto turned away from the window, facing her directly. And what exactly is your role in all this? You warn about dangers, about someone trying to control death, but you don't directly intervene. Why? Balance, she replied simply. I am not merely death, Uzumaki Naruto. I am transition, transformation, the natural progression from one state of being to another. Her expression grew grave. Direct intervention disrupts the balance between realms. It creates ripples, consequences that spread beyond the immediate situation. But you've already intervened by appearing to me, to Tsunade. By taking human form, observation and limited guidance differ from direct action. She moved around the small apartment with idle curiosity, examining Naruto's possessions as if trying to understand him through them. Think of it as the difference between seeing someone on navigating a river versus diverting the river's course. And if we fail, if this person succeeds in breaching the veil completely. She paused, her hand hovering over a photograph of Team 7, young Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura with Kakashi behind them. Then I will have no choice but to act directly, regardless of consequence. The alternative would be the collapse of both our realms into chaos. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Naruto absorbed their implications, understanding for the first time just how significant the coming confrontation might be. I should prepare, he said finally. We leave at dawn. She nodded, her form already beginning to fade. Rest while you can, Naruto Uzumaki. The path ahead requires strength of many kinds. Her voice grew softer as her presence diminished. And remember, the eye shows truth, but truth viewed through human perception remains subjective. Trust what you see, but interpret with your heart as well as your mind. Then she was gone, leaving only a lingering chill and the faint scent of night-blooming flowers. Naruto sank onto his bed, suddenly exhausted. His pack for tomorrow's mission sat ready by the door. Equipment checked and double-checked. The scroll from Tsubaki rested on his nightstand, still sealed, still a question mark. He closed his eyes, seeking the calm center Keita had helped him find during their training sessions. The eye responded more readily now, activating with a mere shift of intention rather than intense concentration. Behind closed eyelids, he could perceive the life foe. RCE of everything around him, the bright flares of shinobi patrolling nearby, the steady glows of civilian neighbors, even the smaller sparks of plants and insects. And something else, a thin place in reality just at the edge of his perception. A boundary between worlds that had always existed but that only now could he perceive. Tomorrow would bring challenges he could barely imagine. For now, he needed rest. Naruto deactivated the dojutsu and allowed exhaustion to claim him, drifting into dreams of silver mist and endless twilight landscapes where a woman with eyes like the void waited to continue his education in the mysteries of death. As consciousness faded, one certainty remained. Whatever awaited at the ancient burial grounds would change everything, for him, for Konoha, and possible. Why for the boundary between life and death itself? Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Whispers of the Dead. Dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues of rose and gold as 5 shinobi gathered at Konoha's northern gate. No words were exchanged as final equipment checks were completed with practiced efficiency. The mission ahead required focus, not conversation. Naruto studied his companions through narrowed eyes. Kakashi stood slightly apart, visible eye scanning the treeline with calculated vigilance. Sakura checked her medical pouches one last time, lips moving in silent inventory. The 2 Anbu operati, vase, codenamed Hawk and Otter by their porcelain masks, maintained perfect stillness, waiting for the command to move out. Tsubaki's warning echoed in his mind. Look at their life threads and tell me if you see anything unusual. Asterisk. With subtle concentration, Naruto activated the Shinigami's eye. The world transformed, revealing the familiar web of life energy surrounding all living things. His team, mates, chakra signatures manifested as distinct patterns, Kakashi's lightning-touched blue, Sakura's precisely controlled green, both healthy and strong. His gaze shifted to the Anbu operatives. The one called Hawk displayed a normal chakra network, powerful and disciplined as expected of elite shinobi. But Otter, Naruto barely suppressed a reaction. The ANBU's life force appeared fractured, ith dark tendrils woven throughout their normal chakra pathways. These shadow-like threads pulsed with an energy signature disturbingly similar to the creatures they'd fought at the Valley of the End. Everyone ready? Kakashi's voice broke through his concentration. Naruto deactivated the dojutsu with a blink, maintaining an outward calm that belied his inner turmoil. Ready. Formation B, Kakashi ordered. All take point. Hawk on right flank, Otter left. Sakura center rear for medical support. Naruto, center front where your sensing abilities can supplement mine. The positioning will deplace Naruto between Kakashi and the compromised Anbu member, intentional. Did Kakashi suspect something as well? No time to consider it now. With a brief hand signal from their team leader, 5 shadows leapt into the forest canopy, moving with the silent precision that marked elite shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. The journey to the ancient burial grounds would take 2 days at standard travel pack. But standard didn't apply to urgent missions. They would push hard, arriving by nightfall if conditions permitted. The new moon was tomorrow night, leaving precious little time to prepare for whatever awaited them. Midday found them deep in Fire Country's northern forests. Ancient trees towered overhead, their massive trunks and dense canopy creating an emerald twilight below. They had maintained a punishing pace for hours, stopping only for brief hydration and soldier pill consumption. During one such pause, Naruto found himself alone with Sakura while the others secured the perimeter. "Something's bothering you," she observed quietly, passing him a water canteen. Not a question, a statement from someone who knew him too well to be fooled by outward composure. Naruto took a long drink before answering. "One of the Anbu, otter. There's something wrong with their chakra." Sakura's eyes narrowed. "Wrong how?" "Dark threads woven through it. Similar to those shadow creatures we fought." He kept his voice low, glancing toward the treeline where the Anbu had disappeared. "I saw it with the Shinigami's eye. Have you told Kakashi-sensei?" "No chance yet, and I'm not certain what it means." Naruto recapped the canteen, weighing his next words carefully. "Tsubaki Kurosawa approached me last night. The rogue Anbu." Sakura's alarm was immediate but controlled. "Naruto, she's classified as extremely dangerous." Quote, "I know, but she warned me to check our Anbu escorts for unusual chakra patterns." He met Sakura's concerned gaze. She was right. Sakura processed this information with the analytical precision that made her an exceptional medical ninja. It could be a ploy to sow distrust among our team. Classic infiltration tactic. Or she could be telling the truth. Naruto frowned. She said corruption in Konoha started with exposure to entities from the Death Realm. Before Sakura could respond, a branch snapped nearby, a deliberate sound from shinobi too skilled for accidental noise. Conversation ceased as Kakashi emerged from the foliage. "We move in 3 minutes, he informed them, visible eye revealing nothing of his thoughts. "The terrain changes soon. Prepare for higher elevation and thinner air." As predicted, the forest began to give way to rockier ground as they continued northward. By late afternoon, they were ascending through mountain passes, leaving the dense woods behind for barren slopes and wind-carved stone. The temperature dropped steadily with each hour, breath-forming visible clouds in the increasingly thin air. "We'll reach the outer boundary by sunset," Kakashi announced during their next brief stop. "The ancient burial grounds occupy the valley beyond that ridge." He gestured toward a distant mountain peak, its summit shrouded in perpetual mist. Legend says the first Hokage himself helped establish the protective barriers around the site. "The barriers remain intact?" Hawk inquired, the first words from either Anbu since departure. "According to our intelligence, yes. But they've weakened over generations without maintenance." Kakashi's tone remained professional, betraying no suspicion. "Our primary objective is to establish a perimeter and prevent any unauthorized access during the new moon. And if someone has already arrived." This from Otter, voice distorted slightly by the porcelain mask. "We assess and engage as necessary." Kakashi replied, "Priority is containment of any breach between realms." As conversation continued regarding tactical approaches, Naruto felt a strange pressure beweal. Ding behind his eyes. Not the familiar sensation of the dojutsu activating, but something different. A tension that spread from his temples to the base of his skull, growing more insistent with each passing minute. "Return. Us. Asterisk." The whisper was so faint he nearly missed it, less a sound than an impression forming directly in his mind. "The veil thins. We see you, eye bearer." Asterisk. Naruto stiffened, glancing around for the source. His companions continued their tactical discussion, showing no reaction to the voice. "Flesh and spirit. Walker between worlds." Asterisk. "Did you hear that?" he asked suddenly, interrupting Kakashi mid-sentence. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward him. "Hear what?" Sakura asked, immediately alert. Naruto listened intently, but the whisper had vanished. "Nothing. Thought I heard something in the trees." Kakashi studied him with subtle intensity before continuing the briefing. But as they resumed their journey, the pressure behind Naruto's eyes returned, stronger now. Accompanied by multiple whispers overlapping in a discordant chorus. The living approach. Ancient grounds of endless sleep. We wait in shadows. Bearer of the sacred eye. Death's chosen walks among us. Boundaries weaken. Return us. Release us. Remember us. Asterisk. The voices varied, some clear and coherent, others fragmented and desperate. Some seemed ancient, speaking in archaic dialects he shouldn't understand yet somehow did. Others felt more recent, their whispers edged with lingering emotion, anger, sorrow, confusion. With grim certainty, Naruto realized what was happening. The scroll had mentioned this. As the eye's power developed, its bearer would begin perceiving the voices of the dead, particularly in places where the boundary between realms grew thin. The ancient burial grounds, final resting place for countless powerful shinobi, would naturally host many such voices. By sunset, they crested the final ridge, revealing their destination spread below. A vast valley nestled between mountain peaks, shrouded in mist that glowed eerily in the fading light. Ancient stone monuments dotted the landscape, worn effigies, crumbling shrines, ceremonial gates standing sentinel over the entrance to the sacred ground. Even from a distance, Naruto could feel the power emanating from the valley, old chakra signatures lingering like perfume, neither alive nor completely extinguished. And with each step closer, the whispers intensified. Flesh-bound traveler, eyes that pierce the sacred veil. Beware what follows. We'll make camp here, Kakashi decided, indicating a defensible position on the ridge overlooking the valley. Tomorrow we'll establish our perimeter closer to the main shrine. As they set up camp with practiced efficiency, Naruto struggled to maintain focus through the growing chorus of voices. They seemed to recognize him, or more specifically, his eyes, addressing him directly with increasing urgency. She comes, the defiler. Servant of the hungering void. Chains of the living. Tell death we remember the covenant. Tell her we have kept our watch, even as our names fade from stone. While the others prepared a cold meal and arranged watch rotations, Naruto volunteered for first patrol, needing space to process this new development. Kakashi agreed with a knowing look that suggested he sensed something amiss but wouldn't press for details yet. Once alone at the edge of camp, Naruto activated the Shinigami's eye, hoping it might help him better understand what he was experiencing. The world transformed into its now familiar alternate state, but with a significant difference. The valley below was no longer empty. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of faint luminous silhouettes moved throughout the burial grounds. Some wandered aimlessly, others stood in solemn vigil beside stone markers, while others seemed to be performing eternal repetitions of significant moments from their lives. The dead, not fully manifested spirits, but impressions. Echoes of those interred in the sacred ground, visible only to eyes that could pierce the veil. There restless, came a soft voice behind him. Naruto turned to find she standing at his shoulder. Her white hair gleaming in the twilight, black tips seeming to absorb the surrounding darkness. Unlike her previous manifestations, she appeared entirely solid now, dressed in simple traveling clothes. That would not look out of place on a mortal woman. You can see them too, he said, not a question but a confirmation. Of course, she gazed down at the spectral panorama. Though my perception differs from yours. Where you see echoes and impressions, I see complete souls, their histories, their natures, their transitions between states of being. They're talking to me, have been for hours. She nodded, unsurprised. The second awakening of the eye. The ability to hear those who have crossed beyond the veil. She glanced at him with something like sympathy. It can be overwhelming at first. That's putting it mildly. Naruto rubbed his temples, trying to organize his thoughts through the constant murmuring. Some of them are talking about a defiler coming tomorrow night. And they mentioned you, said to tell you they remember the covenant and have kept their watch. Interest sharpened She's otherworldly features. The sentinel pact. She turned her gaze back to the valley, expression pensive. Long ago, when these grounds were first consecrated, certain powerful warriors chose to remain after death, to maintain vigil over the boundaries between realms at this nexus point. In exchange, their spirits would never be fully absorbed into the cycle of rebirth. They chose to stay as ghosts. The concept seemed more sad than noble to Naruto. Not ghosts as you understand them. More like guardians, anchored to this place by choice and duty. Shi's voice softened. A sacrifice few would make willingly. The whispers grew more insistent, organizing into a coherent message. The circle of 12 stones. Beneath the broken mountain face. The ancient seal weakens there. They're trying to help us, Naruto realized. Telling us where the breach will occur. Yes, Shi's expression grew grave. Even in death, shinobi remain loyal to their oaths of protection. But their power to intervene directly has waned over centuries. That is why the Eye has awakened to serve as bridge between their knowledge and the actions of the living. I should tell Kakashi and the others. About the 12 stones. Yes, but not about the source of your information. She placed a cautioning hand on his arm, the first time she had initiated physical contact. Her touch felt cool but not unpleasant, like mountain spring water. Few mortals react well to learning the dead speak directly to their companions. The sound of approaching footsteps ended their conversation. She vanished without further comment, dissolving into the evening shadows as Sakura appeared along the ridge path. Everything okay? She asked, scanning the perimeter with professional alertness. You've been out here a while. Naruto deactivated his dojutsu before turning to her. Just thinking. He hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. The Eye shows me things about this place. There's a circle of 12 stones beneath a broken mountain face somewhere in the valley. I think that's the breach will happen tomorrow night. Sakura absorbed this information without questioning its source, one of the things he most appreciated about her. We should tell Kakashi-sensei. That could significantly narrow our search area. As they walked back toward camp, Naruto maintained outward composure while the whispers continued their relentless commentary. Some offered warnings about coming dangers. Others pleaded for various forms of release or recognition, and still others simply expressed wonder at the presence of one who could perceive them. Remember our names. Speak them to the living world. We fade otherwise. 70 years in silent watch. The hungry ones test our barriers. With each passing season, Eye-bearer, tell the shadow-touched one. We see the parasite that feeds upon their soul. Death approaches from within as well as without. That last message stopped Naruto cold. The shadow-touched one, Otter. The Anbu with corrupted chakra pathways. Whatever affected them wasn't just an anomaly. It was actively dangerous according to the spirits. But how to address this without revealing the source of his knowledge? And more importantly, how to determine if Otter was a victim needing help or a willing participant in something sinister? These questions weighed heavily as he rejoined the group around the small, heatless light crystal serving as their campfire. Kakashi listened intently to the information about the 12 stones, making notes on a rough map of the valley. Good work, he said when Naruto finished. That matches fragmentary intelligence about the burial ground's most sacred circle. Legend says the first Hokage himself created those stones as anchors for the protective barriers. We should investigate at first light, Hawk suggested, voice neutral behind the porcelain mask. Agreed. Kakashi rolled up the map. 2-person teams. Hawk with me, Otter with Sakura. Naruto will coordinate from a central position where his sensing abilities can cover both teams. The assignments effectively separated the two Anbu while keeping Naruto positioned to monitor everyone, further evidence that Kakashi harbored his own suspicions. Nothing in his demeanor betrayed this. But after years under his leadership, Naruto had learned to read the subtle tactics underlying his casual commands. As they settled in for the night, watch rotations established, Naruto found sleep elusive. The whispers continued their ghostly chorus, rising and falling like spiritual tides. He practiced the mental focusing techniques Keita had taught him, creating a barrier between his conscious thoughts and the constant murmuring. It helped, but didn't silence them completely. Instead, they became background noise, like distant conversation in another room, still present but no longer overwhelming. Until midnight, when one voice cut through all others with crystal clarity. Uzumaki blood calls to Uzumaki blood. Sister kin approaches from the east. Drawn by the awakening eye, Naruto bolted upright, fully alert. This message felt different, immediate and relevant rather than historical or cryptic. He expanded his senses, reaching out with both traditional shinobi techniques and his developing dojutsu abilities. There, at the edge of his perception. A chakra signature approaching their position from the eastern slope. Powerful, controlled, and bearing an unmistakable signature he'd encountered only in himself and in ancient scrolls, the distinctive spiral pattern of Uzumaki chakra circulation. Another Uzumaki, alive and coming this way. Without waking the others, Naruto silently moved toward the eastern perimeter. Hawk, currently on watch, nodded acknowledgement from his position but made no move to stop him. They'd established protocols for Naruto's sensory reconnaissance earlier. The mountain air bit cold against his skin as he navigated the rocky terrain, guided by the approaching chakra signature. The whispers intensified as he moved. Blood recognizes blood, scattered clan reunites, spiral returns home. 20 minutes of careful movement brought him to a small plateau overlooking a steep ravine. There he waited, concealed among wind-carved rock formations. As the presence drew nearer, the moon, nearly dark before tomorrow's new phase, provided little illumination, but his enhanced perception compensated. A figure emerged from the shadows below, athletic and graceful, moving with the confident precision of an experienced shinobi. As they ascended toward his position, details became clearer. A woman approximately his age, with the trademark Uzumaki dark red hair. Though hers featured a distinctive white streak from temple to end. She wore practical traveling clothes in muted greens and browns, with subtle armor reinforcements visible at vital points. Multiple weapons pouches and scrolls hung from a utility belt, and traditional Uzumaki spiral patterns had been tattooed or painted around her wrists and forearms. Most telling was the wary alertness in her movement, the practiced caution of someone long accustomed to traveling alone in hostile territory. When she reached the plateau's edge, Naruto stepped from concealment, NDS raised to show he carried no weapons. "You're a long way from any village," he said quietly. She didn't startle, she'd known he was there. A kunai appeared in her hand with practiced ease, neither threatening nor retreating. Violet eyes, another Uzumaki trait, assessed him with cool precision. "Uzumaki Naruto," she stated, recognition clear in her voice. "Konoha's Jinchuriki." A pause, and apparently more. The way she emphasized that last word suggested she sensed something about him beyond his public reputation. "You have me at a disadvantage," he replied evenly. "You know my name, but I don't know yours." Amaya. She remained poised at the edge of the plateau, ready to retreat if necessary. Uzumaki Amaya. The confirmation sent a jolt through him, even though he'd already sensed her lineage. Another Uzumaki, living, breathing proof he wasn't the last of his clan. How? The question escaped before he could frame it more coherently. Understanding crossed her features. No. All Uzumaki lived in Uzushiogakure when it fell. Small settlements existed throughout the continent. Some survived. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I've spent years tracking down scattered clan members. When I felt the awakening of the eye 3 days ago, I knew I had to find its bearer." "You felt it? From how far away?" "I was in the land of rivers, investigating rumors of an Uzumaki artifact dealer." She took a cautious step forward. The awakening of a Shinigami's eye sends ripples through bloodline connections. Any trained Uzumaki sensor would have felt it. "There are others. Other Uzumaki still alive." A shadow crossed Amaya's face. "Few. Very few. Most living in hiding, having abandoned or forgotten their heritage." Her expression hardened. "I've dedicated my life to finding them. To preserving what remains of our clan's knowledge and traditions." Naruto absorbed this information, emotions warring within him, hope that he wasn't alone, sorrow for what had been lost, and growing curiosity about this woman who carried herself with such fierce pride in their shared heritage. Why come here? To the burial grounds. Because history is repeating itself. Amaya secured her kunai but remained vigilant. The last time a Shinigami's eye awakened, 3 generations ago, it preceded an attempt to breach the veil between realms. The Uzumaki clan stopped it then, at great cost. Her gaze intensified. "I intend to ensure we succeed again." Before Naruto could respond, the whispers surged around him, urgent and alarmed. "Danger approaches. Dark threads seeking death's door. The traitor moves now." Simultaneously, his enhanced senses detected a flare of corrupted chakra back at camp. Otter, moving with purpose toward Sakura's sleeping form, hands forming unfamiliar seals. "We need to get back to camp," Naruto said sharply, already turning. "Now." To her credit, Amaya asked no questions, simply falling into step beside him as they raced across the rocky terrain. What are we facing? One of my team, an Anbu, has been compromised. Corrupted chakra, similar to entities we encountered recently. He spoke in clipped sentences as they moved. They're making their move. Possession or willing collaboration. Quote, unknown. They covered the distance in minutes, chakra-enhanced speed carrying them across gaps and over obstacles. As they approached the camp perimeter, Naruto activated the Shinigami's eye. Immediately assessing the situation, Otter stood over Sakura, hands completing a complex sequence of seals. Sakura appeared unnaturally still, caught in some kind of paralysis technique. Kakashi and Hawk were nowhere visible, likely patrolling the wider perimeter as scheduled. Dark energy gathered around Otter's hands, not normal chakra but something sickly and corrupt. Similar to what Naruto had seen in the shadow creatures. Whatever technique they were preparing would channel that corruption directly into Sakura. Disrupt the seal sequence, Amaya whispered beside him. Her own hands already forming countersigns. All contain the backlash. Without hesitation, Naruto created 3 shadow clones that burst from concealment, attacking from different angles to force Otter away from Sakura. The Anbu abandoned the technique, leaping backward with inhuman grace, hands shifting to offensive patterns. Interference was predicted. Otter's voice emerged distorted, as if multiple voices spoke simultaneously. The Uzumaki always meddle in affairs beyond their understanding. Says the puppet with someone else's hand up their back, Naruto countered. Stepping into the clearing with the Shinigami's eye fully activated. With his enhanced perception, he could see clearly now. Tendrils of dark energy had completely infiltrated Otter's chakra network, entering around a seal visible at the base of their neck when they moved. Amaya emerged beside him, her hands completing a complex sequence that created a barrier circle around the clearing, not to keep Otter in, Naruto realized, but to prevent whatever was inside them from escaping if the host was incapacitated. Release our comrade, Naruto demanded, or I'll remove you by force. Otter's laugh held no humor. Remove me, child. I am not some simple parasite to be extracted. I have become one with this vessel. The Anbu's hands moved to remove their mask, revealing a face contorted in an unnatural smile. Eyes solid black from corner to corner. I have dwelled in the spaces between worlds for centuries, watching, waiting. The coming ritual merely accelerates what is already inevitable. Which is what, exactly? Naruto kept his tone conversational, buying time as he assessed options. Through the eye, he could see Sakura beginning to overcome the paralysis technique, her formidable Chakra control fighting through the effects. The thinning of all boundaries. The merging of realms. Otter, or whatever controlled them, made a dismissive gesture. Your limited perception cannot grasp the glory of existence without division. Life and death, unified into perfect whole. Yeah. Cosmic transcendence, eternal unity, heard it all before. Naruto created more shadow clones, awning them strategically around the clearing. Here's the thing, I've actually spoken with Death herself, and she's not on board with your merger plan. That provoked a reaction. Surprise, quickly masked by contempt. The Shinigami is but one aspect of a greater cycle. Her opposition is expected but irrelevant. Throughout this exchange, Amaya had been subtly weaving signs with her left hand while maintaining the barrier with her right, a display of chakra control that impressed even Naruto. Now she caught his eye and nodded slightly. You know what else is irrelevant? Naruto asked, stepping forward to hold the entity's attention. Your opinion on the matter. In a fluid movement, Amaya slammed her palm against the ground. Uzumaki sealing technique. Spirit cage. Golden chains of pure chakra erupted from the earth beneath Otter, wrapping around their limbs and torso before they could react. The chains tightened, forcing the Anbu to their knees as symbols appeared on the links, glowing with suppressive power. Extraction next, Amaya stated clinically, forming another sequence of seals. This will be unpleasant for the host but necessary. Wait, Naruto approached the immobilized Anbu, activating the full power of the Shinigami's eye. Let me try something first. The whispers that had accompanied him for hours grew focused, offering guidance. See the connection point. Where corruption enters pure flesh. Sever that thread only. With his enhanced perception, Naruto could indeed see it, a primary channel where the dark energy connected to Otter's natural chakra system. Anchored at a specific point near their heart. Not a physical object but an energy construct, a thread-binding parasite to host. Focusing his concentration as Keita had taught him, Naruto directed his awareness to that connection point. The eye allowed him to perceive it clearly, and now he attempted the next step, influencing what he perceived. Mentally, he envisioned that connection weakening, thinning, becoming fragile. To his surprise, the dark thread responded, fluctuating as if affected by his concentration. Encouraged, he intensified his focus, imagining the thread severing completely. Otter convulsed suddenly, back arching as a scream tore from their throat, not the multi-layered voice of before, but a human sound of pain and desperation. Black energy began seeping from their eyes, mouth, and nostrils. Trying to maintain its hold. It's working, Amaya observed, reinforcing her sealing chains. The parasite is losing its anchor. Keep going. Naruto reached out physically now, placing his hand on Otter's forehead. The contact amplified his connection to the energy patterns within. With one final, focused effort, he severed the primary thread completely. The effect was immediate and violent. Dark energy erupted from Otter's body like black smoke, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape that screeched with inhuman rage as it hurled itself against Amaya's barrier. The Anbu collapsed, unconscious but free of the corruption that had invaded their system. Containment holding, Amaya reported, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of maintaining both the barrier and the sealing chains. But not for long. This entity is stronger than I anticipated. The shadowy figure continued to assault the barrier, each impact sending painful reverberations through Amaya's body. Cracks began appearing in the energy field. We need something more permanent than a barrier, Naruto said, mind racing through options. The scroll Tsubaki had given him contained sealing techniques specifically designed for entities from the death realm, but he hadn't had time to fully study them. Before he could formulate a plan, the air temperature plummeted dramatically. Frost cry, stylized across the ground in intricate patterns, and the shadows within the barrier writhed in apparent distress. Presumptuous little fragment, came a voice like winter wind through ancient graves. Reaching beyond your designated boundaries. She materialized within the barrier circle, directly facing the shadow entity. No longer appearing human, she had reverted to her more elemental form, taller. Her features fluid and constantly shifting, robes of deepest black flowing around her like living shadow. Her eyes blazed with cold fire, depthless and absolute. The shadow creature recoiled, its formless shape quivering in what appeared to be recognition and fear. Shinigami, it hissed, voice like dry leaves scraping stone. This doesn't concern you. The barriers fall regardless. Everything that transitions between life and death concerns me. She's voice reverberated with power that made the very air vibrate. You have violated the natural order, parasite. A fragment of greater darkness attempting to prepare the way for its master. She extended one hand, fingers elongating into impossible shapes. Return to your proper place in the cycle. The shadow entity shrieked, attempting to flee. But she's outstretched hand seemed to exert an irresistible pull. The creature's form stretched, twisted, and finally collapsed inward like water down a drain, drawn into She's palm until nothing remained. The oppressive atmosphere lifted immediately. Amaya released her barrier with a gasp of exhaustion, the golden chains dissipating into sparks of chakra. Sakura, finally free of the paralysis, rushed to check on Otter's unconscious form. She turned toward Naruto, her form gradually shifting back to the more human appearance she had adopted recently. You performed an extraction, she observed. Something like approval in her tone. Few manage such precision on their first attempt. I had help. Naruto gestured vaguely around them, indicating the whispers that had guided him. Understanding flickered in She's otherworldly eyes. Ah, the voices have found you. Earlier than expected, but perhaps necessary given the accelerated timeline. Will Otter survive? Naruto asked, moving to where Sakura performed emergency medical treatment on the Anbu. The host will live, she confirmed, following him. Though recovery will be difficult. The parasite had been integrated for some time, months, perhaps years. Quote, which means they've been compromised since before this mission. Sakura looked up, her expression grim. Everything they knew about our objectives, our capabilities. Has been shared with whoever sent that thing, Naruto finished. The element of surprise is gone. A commotion at the perimeter announced Kakashi and Hawk's return. They took in the scene. With professional assessment, the unconscious Anbu, the signs of conflict, and the presence of an unknown redhead maintaining a defensive posture near Naruto. More surprisingly, they showed no reaction to Shi's presence. Following his gaze, Amaya whispered, "They can't see her." The Shinigami remains invisible to those without the necessary perception. Kakashi approached cautiously. Report. Naruto provided a concise summary, omitting mentions of Shi's intervention and the spirit voices that had warned him. He introduced Amaya simply as another Uzumaki with relevant expertise who sensed a disturbance and came to investigate. Kakashi's visible eye revealed nothing of his thoughts as he processed this information. So our mission parameters are compromised, one team member is incapacitated. And we've confirmed hostile intent focused on tomorrow night's new moon. He glanced at Amaya, and we have an unexpected ally with convenient timing. The skepticism in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Amaya met his gaze directly. My clan has defended these grounds for generations, copy ninja. My presence isn't convenience, it's responsibility. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura interjected. Otter needs proper medical attention. These symptoms are beyond field treatment capabilities. Can they be moved? Kakashi asked. Carefully, yes, but they won't regain consciousness soon, and when they do, she hesitated. There may be psychological trauma from the possession. Kakashi made a quick decision. Hawk will escort Otter back to Konoha, fast travel, emergency protocols. The rest of us continue the mission. He turned to Amaya. Assuming you're willing to cooperate fully with Konoha Shinobi. My loyalty is to the Uzumaki clan and the maintenance of natural boundaries, she replied evenly. In this instance, our goals align. Good enough for now. Kakashi nodded toward the valley below. At first light, we locate the 12-stone circle and establish countermeasures. Whatever's coming tomorrow night, we'll be ready. As the group reorganized, Naruto found himself standing between two worlds, the tactical planning of his Konoha comrades on one side, and the supernatural awareness represented by Shi and the whispers of the dead on the other. Bridging these realms was Amaya, tangible proof of his heritage and a connection to clan knowledge he'd never had access to before. The whispers continued their commentary. The wheel turns again. Uzumaki blood reunites. Death walks beside you. Beware the broken mountain. What sleeps beneath stirs now. Ancient hunger wakes. When camp was re-established and watches reassigned, Naruto found a moment alone with Amaya at the perimeter. The sky was beginning to lighten with pre-dawn gray, stars fading one by one. Thank you, he said simply, for the help with the extraction. I wouldn't have known what to do without your sealing technique. Amaya nodded acknowledgement. The Uzumaki spirit cage is one of our fundamental techniques. I'm surprised you haven't learned it yet, given your lineage. There wasn't exactly anyone around to teach me, Naruto replied, no bitterness in his tone, just statement of fact. Something softened in Amaya's expression. No, I suppose not. She hesitated, then added, I can teach you, if you want. That and other Uzumaki techniques. It's part of why I search for survivors, to ensure our knowledge isn't lost forever. I'd like that. Naruto studied her more carefully in the growing light. Up close, he could see the subtle spiral patterns tattooed around her wrists weren't decorative. They were functional seal components, ready to be activated with chakra. Where have you been all this time? Where do you live? Nowhere and everywhere. A hint of old pain crossed her features. After our settlement was discovered and destroyed when I was 12, I learned the value of constant movement. Another attack on Uzumaki survivors. Naruto's jaw tightened. Who? Mercenary. Hired by those who fear our sealing abilities. The same forces that orchestrated Uzushiogeku's destruction generations ago. Her expression hardened. Our blood carries power others have always envied and feared. Before Naruto could press for more details, the whispers intensified suddenly, dozens of voices speaking in urgent unison. The broken seal awakens. First tendrils reach through the veil. She arrives with dawn. Simultaneously, a surge of foreign chakra washed over the valley like a wave of cold water. Naruto activated the Shinigami's eye instantly, scanning for the source. There, at the valley's center, A pillar of dark energy was rising from what must be the 12-stone circle, visible even at this distance through his enhanced perception. Within that energy, a figure was taking shape, humanoid but wrong somehow, proportions distorted, movements unnaturally fluid. "It's starting," he said aloud, drawing everyone's attention. "Someone's already at the stone circle, activating something." Kakashi was beside him instantly. "I don't sense anything. Trust me, it's happening." Naruto pointed toward the center of the valley. "We need to move, now." To his credit, Kakashi didn't question further. "Change of plans. We move immediately, full tactical approach." He turned to the others. "Hawk, your return to Konoha is delayed. We'll need every asset." As the Team G athered equipment with practiced efficiency, Naruto felt Shi's presence beside him, invisible to the others but clear in his perception. "The boundary thins more quickly than anticipated," she observed, her voice carrying concern foreign to her usual detachment. "Someone of significant power assists from the other side." "The other side?" Naruto asked quietly, pretending to adjust his equipment. "You mean the Death Realm? Not death itself, but the space between, the crossroads where we first met." Shi's expression grew grave. "A place where entities neither fully dead nor alive can gain coup. Archase in the material world if given proper anchors. Like the stone circle." "Precisely." She gazed toward the valley, her otherworldly eyes seeing far beyond normal perception. "What builds there?" "East is a bridge, unstable but growing stronger. By nightfall, when the moon is dark, it will be complete enough for crossing." "And then what happens?" She turned those depthless eyes toward him. "Then, the natural order that separates realms collapses. The dead walk among the living not as spirits but as material beings. Those caught between worlds gain physical form without surrendering their otherworldly powers." Her voice lowered. "Chaos, Naruto Uzumaki. Absolute chaos." The team was ready now, forming up for rapid descent into the valley. Naruto joined them, the weight of Shi's warning heavy on his shoulders. Whatever awaited them at the stone circle represented a threat beyond normal shinobi conflicts, a fundamental disruption to the barriers between life and death. As they moved out, the whispers of the dead accompanied him, their messages growing more urgent with each passing moment. "Remember the old ways. Blood seals what blood has opened. The eye shows the path. The sentinel souls stand ready to aid the living in final battle. Speak our names for power. Uzumaki and Shinigami, ancient pact renewed in you. Worlds hang in balance." Dawn broke over the mountains as they descended into the valley. Golden light illuminating ancient monuments and weathered shrines. Under different circumstances, the beauty of this sacred place would have commanded reverence and respect. Now, it merely highlighted the wrongness of the dark energy pillar rising from its center, a corruption of everything this ground represented. Naruto glanced at Amaya, who moved beside him with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. Her expression was grim but determined, hands ready near her sealing scrolls. Whatever came next, he was no longer facing it alone, not just with his Konoha comrades but with blood kin who understood the heritage he was only beginning to discover. The whispers swirled around him like leaves in an autumn wind, guiding and warning with increasing clarity. And somewhere ahead, someone was already working to tear open the veil between worlds, accelerating a process that should have taken until nightfall. Time was running out. As they approached the final ridge overlooking the stone circle, a figure stepped into their path, scarlet hair catching the morning light, amber eyes evaluating them with predatory assessment. "Uzumaki Naruto," Tsubaki Kurosawa greeted with a thin smile. "Right on schedule. I hoped you'd bring friends." She glanced at Amaya, recognition flickering in her gaze. "Another Uzumaki. Perfect. We'll need all the sealing expertise we can get for what's coming." Kakashi tensed beside him, clearly ready to engage the rogue Anbu. Naruto raised a hand, urging caution. "You knew about the accelerated timeline." "Of course. Why do you think I gave you that scroll?" Tsubaki gestured toward the valley below. "Look with those special eyes of yours, Uzumaki. Really look at who's conducting the ritual." Naruto activated the Shinigami's eye, Fok, using on the distant stone circle now clearly visible below. A woman stood at its center, arms raised as she channeled dark energy into the ancient stones. Her chakra signature was familiar, he'd encountered it recently. "Impossible," he breathed. "What do you see?" Kakashi demanded. Naruto's voice hardened with certainty and betrayal. It's Keita Senju. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.